The Midsummer edition of Democratic Visions features perspectives on anti-Semitism, American diversity, dog park politics, and presidential candidates. Here's producer Jeff Strait.
Welcome. This edition of Democratic Visions begins with our good friend Howard Lieberman. Back in February, we recorded a true story that Howard first shared during the 2009 Minnesota Fringe Festival. It's about his visit that same year to the Nazi-operated Auschwitz complex in Poland during the Second World War. It's about a ghostly plea and a promise.
It's August 2009. It was going to be a very good summer. I had my number chosen to participate in the Minnesota State Fringe Festival. And not only was I chosen, I had a good venue. I had a great venue, and I was ready to go, except for two things. One, I didn't have a show ready. Two, I got a call from a Chabad rabbi, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, with whom I'd traveled in the past. His first words to me were, "Howard, we're going to the death camps in Central Europe." Okay. When are we going? Well, we're going August 1st of this year. I said, "Rabbi, I can't go. I cannot go. I have a good venue for a show I'm working on." He said, "Howard, you have to go. You have to go. You have to go. We have to go to the place where our people were put to death just because they were Jewish." Well, I went back and forth. But finally, I said yes. I said, "Okay, I'll go." Because I had decided that I would take whatever I learned, whatever I felt by visiting the death camps in Central Europe, and come back and in 2 days turn that into a show. So here it is, August 2009, the 1st of August, and I'm walking down the train tracks at Auschwitz, walked under the sign that says, "Work will set you free," and there's about 20 very religious Orthodox Jews, my wife, who is a fallen Irish Catholic, and me, a devoutly agnostic, anti-religious, left-wing Jew. And we stop. And we stop right here. We stop right here. To our right there, is the stairway down to where the Jewish people were told they were going to be taking showers. But we know there were no showers there. There was Zyklon B, a poisonous gas. And as we stop and we look and our hearts are sinking, the leader of the group, the leader, he looks at me. He says, "Howard, I want you to read from Elie Wiesel's Night." And I looked at him. His name was Zaki, short for Yitzchak. I said, "Zaki, why me? Why do I have to do this?" And he looked at me with this smile. He said, "Because you're an artist, a performer, and so I insist that you do this." What could I say? What could I say? What could I say when all the people are looking at me and I'm holding a book? So I opened it to when Elie, as a young person, arrives at Auschwitz with his mother. And we know now the people who were told to go to the right were the people the Nazis didn't think were valuable to them. They were too young, they were too old, they were infirm in some way. And they began to direct them down that stairway. They were told, leave your luggage, we'll bring it to the other end so that when you come out after the showers, you will have all your clothes and your belongings. Now we know that wasn't true. And I'm reading and I look over to the stairs and I see a line of people. I see the ghosts of the people heading down the stairs, and I see one girl holding her mother's hand as they walk to their doom. And the ghost of this girl looks right at me, looks right into my eyes. And she says, "Please, mister, please, don't forget me. Don't forget us. Because if you keep us in your heart, we won't really be dead." And I promised that girl that I would do that. And as we walked around Auschwitz and saw the shoes and saw the other ovens, and we saw ashes, actual ashes still in the ovens, I said to myself, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. You see, after my dad left us when I was 9, and my mother died when I was 14, I was bounced around to different places. I had been Howie, the good boy, the nice Jewish boy. But when my mom died and I had no home and was literally put into the street, Howie was locked away in a cellar. And Howard emerged. Howard wasn't a nice Jewish boy. Howard was an anti-religious, devoutly agnostic, left-wing Jew who wanted nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with Chicago, my home. And I left and went wherever the road took me. And it took me some very, very interesting places. I was taken in by a drag queen on the streets of Boston. I lived in Montreal. I lived in Winnipeg. I lived in the north of England. I lived anywhere I could. But now I'm standing in Auschwitz, hearing the words of this poor young girl, seeing her eyes looking straight at me. And at that moment, Howard's heart opened. And Howie came up from the cellar and decided to be an adult, a caring adult. And so I am to this day. Well, that's not entirely true either. You see, it's been said that Jewish people have a psychological go bag packed at all times because they know that even though things are okay today, they may not be tomorrow. Well, I put that psychological go bag away many, many years ago. And I never thought I'd have to take it out again. Then on October 7th, 2023, Hamas terrorists invaded Israel, murdering, raping, burning women, children, old men, slaughtered people because they were Jewish. Took many more hostage. And my heart began to harden. Not in the same way it did long ago when I put it in the cellar. But as an adult, I began to look around. I began to see the protests at one of my universities, Columbia University, tearing down pictures of captives, shouting from the river to the sea. Well, what's between the river and the sea? The state of Israel. The only country created by the vote of the nations of the world. The only democracy in the entire Middle East. The only country where women and men are treated equally. The only country when you arrive, you can hear the call to prayer for the Muslim people. You can go to the Stations of the Cross for the Christian people. There are synagogues. There's everything. There are 2 Arab parties. There are all kinds of... It's the most diverse, free country in the world. And then, day by day by day, the I'm anti-Israel took off its costume, and out came, I hate Jews. I hate Jews. Swastikas appearing everywhere. My neighbor yelling at me that because I'm Jewish, I know this, and I know that, and I know the other thing. I don't know any of those things. So where does this leave me today? I'm at the precipice of respect for all my brothers and sisters of any background in the world. And hatred. Hatred for those who would destroy my people again just because of who we are. I'm Howard Lieberman. I'm still a devoutly agnostic, anti-religious, left-wing Jew. But make no mistake, I am a Jew. And if you come after my people, I will come after you. Thank you.
Dr. Brad Canham and Pastor John Matthews met for the very first time in the BCAT studio right here in late June. John and Brad are very concerned about the fears many Americans have about diversity, stereotypes, strongman government, and democracy. Communication and artificial intelligence flow through Brad's work life. John recently retired from Grace Lutheran Church in Apple Valley. He has studied and written about German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was executed by the Nazis.
I happen to spend most of my career in Holocaust studies, but when it comes to Nazi in Germany, the one phrase that was on most posters would be one Volk, one Führer, meaning one leader, one nation, one people. And now we know in hindsight that that was a disaster. So we have this, it's an opportunity in our time too, to take all of that confusion and chaos out there, if you will, what people are feeling.
Sure.
How do we talk about it, whether in church or education or social settings, where those other things aren't threats, but they're real gifts?
Whatever the issue is, whether it's abortion rights or pro-life, etc., my sense is, I have an opinion, but it's important that there are sides and that they're able to hash it out, and a wonderful democracy gives us means to do that. Conservatives, liberals, it's like we need each other in order to get the best out of what we are as a culture. That's what I believe. I don't tend to kind of want to put a flag in one corner or another corner and say this is the way it has to be. I think that kind of leads, as you point, to the road to ruin.
And I too have been of the mind that, well, do people ever change their mind? Well, they do. and you never know when. That's not in our control, right? Relationships become incredibly important. Usually those stereotypes and usually those walls are broken down as people get to know one another. Oh, we might read a book or take a class on something different than we are, but I often find that when one has a fear, if one is a Christian and fear is Muslim, having a neighbor or a work colleague who is Muslim and you begin to get to know them as people, all kinds of walls come down, and then the days ahead look quite different than they did when those were seen as adversaries or enemies. So how do we build those relationships? The church has been one place, but community activities have been, night out in community, coming together with other people. Somehow that's needed because we're in a world that's all the way down the road in terms of how mixed and beautiful that is. I'll share one instance that happened last October. I was invited by our Representative Angie Craig, give the prayer before the U.S. House of Representatives opened on October 26th. I think once a week or so they invite someone, not the chaplain, but someone else to come in and pray. So she had invited me, as the legislators are encouraged to ask their pastor to come. So my wife and I went out there, and on the 25th, and that date was more dynamic than we might imagine. On the 25th, Mike Johnson of Louisiana was chosen as the Speaker of the House. His first day with the gavel was the day that I prayed.
John Matthews, Grace Lutheran Church in Apple Valley, Minnesota.
Let us pray. God of all peoples, we are living on land once inhabited by the... And I'll give you an example of one sentence which I hoped would make a difference, but did it or not, I don't know. My prayer was that the legislators would be able to see the face of God in every person here, at, or beyond our borders. God of all nations, you have made each of us in your image. Empower us to see your face in the face of every other person, here, at, and beyond our borders. That's a religious prayer, but that's extremely political. It's religious in the sense that your whole world changes. I, for one, am not close enough or empowered enough, but to solve the problem of immigration at the border. But how we deal with that is going to be considerably different if you see the face of God in that Guatemalan or El Salvadoran person, or you see the face of Satan. And so in that prayer, I say it's an example of, for me at least, the way we see things is shaped by our experience and what we've been taught, as we talked about earlier, our traditions, not only in the legislature, but in every place in this country, in the world, I suppose. How we've learned to see things dictates or influences how we act out. The problem has to be solved. Immigration it's a challenge right now, no matter what side you're on. It's not solved. It's not at a good place. But how are we going to view the people involved so that we make the most humane choice for everybody, right? So yeah, so much depends on those relationships, which we have or don't. It's so easy to make those decisions when I have no relationship with the Guatemalan who's coming up through Mexico.
Right.
I just make it as an objective. It's a detached, who cares?
Right.
As soon as I see that person different, my posture in that issue now takes on probably a sense of human compassion. And again, now politically, in the age, it doesn't solve it. It just changes the way we view it.
And now this. His name is Tucker. Her name is Julie. Julie Iverson is back, and we're talking about your favorite dog park.
Oh, yes.
Where's it located?
Well, it's over near the University of Minnesota campus near Dinkytown and Minneapolis.
I've heard
the
that.
East
Yeah.
Base.
What's the name? Does it have a name or anything?
Marcy Holmes is
Marcy
the name of the
Holmes?
park. And a couple of years ago, we came up for a redesign, revamping of our park.
Okay.
This park is a half block, a half a city block. It's very small. It was originally the site of Marcy Holmes Elementary School, where I went to elementary school.
Sure, go on.
Long gone, although one of the fences is still there. But it came up for redesign, and they sent out the redesign for comment. First thing was they had put the little children's play area against the street. Now, Park Design 101, the children play near the center, away from traffic.
Yeah.
And then this is a half a city block, remember, about 1/6 of that half a city block was designated as a dog park. And the powers that be, our neighborhood association board, park board people were like, a dog park in Marcy Holmes, this is going to be great, except it's so small. Now, I have an 85-pound golden retriever. This place has a 3-foot fence. He can clear that in a heartbeat if he sees
With
another
a couple
dog
of feet
coming.
to spare, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good.
And it's got this little springboard in the middle of it. Now, this opened officially a year or so ago now. There are no restrooms in this park, but we have a hammock area for the homeless to move in.
Okay, fine, that's nice.
Yeah, but this dog park, I think I've seen one dog exiting the dog park in the time it's been open. Now, I'm not there daily, but in my various travels around the neighborhood, I see it. I also talk with a lot of people in the neighborhood, in my front yard, and they say they've never seen anybody coming and going for it. But they still talk about, we have a dog park. And the other thing they talk about is there was suddenly somebody discovered that Marcy, who was Secretary of State,
So there's bad news here, right?
yeah, well, he was a racist, of course.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, he wasn't necessarily a racist. He was Secretary of State, but he's never been to Minnesota, and he was involved in statements of policy that didn't support abolishing slavery.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like that Calhoun issue with the Bidamacasa.
Yes. So they got all up in arms. The board decided of the neighborhood association said, we got to rename the park. So they took a survey. I'd be surprised if a couple hundred people answered it out of the 16,000 who live in the neighborhood.
Okay.
But they proposed 8 names, and the one that won. There is now a move to go before the park board to have this renamed Dinky Park, with its Dinky Dog Park.
I never liked the term dinky town.
No,
you know?
yeah,
gee.
the whole way this is being managed
Yeah.
is so typical of some of the parts of city governance that
Sure.
are dysfunctional.
But this is the park board, and that operates pretty much like the city council?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much like, and but we have a dog park.
Okay.
Hallelujah, we have a dog park.
Good. And you haven't seen much use of it then?
I have seen no use of it. I would not take my dog there because, a squirrel on the other side of the fence, he's gone. Is there some thinking that everybody owns a small dachshund, or French bulldogs are popular now, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know where they're thinking, but most of the dogs I know are Goldens, Labs, Poodles, Golden Doodles.
Golden Doodle?
Yes.
Sounds like science fiction from the Frankenstein era.
Oh, it's science from the Poodles Don't Shed era.
Okay. So where do you take your dog to exercise?
I luckily have a fenced yard. And so we kind of operate a private dog park. We have people and dogs in the neighborhood we know.
Okay.
It's how I feel kind of in touch with a pretty broad cross-section of my community.
Democratic Vision's favorites, Mike Gelfand and Mike McEntee, were kind of in stun mode the day after the first Biden-Trump debate. That's when they had their first ever chat on our Modest series.
Hey, Mike.
Mike?
So you laying in supplies for the end of democracy?
Well, I've got a couple bets down. You can bet on anything online. So, yeah, I got a few.
Okay.
But, of course, the money probably wouldn't be worth anything. So
There is that problem, isn't there?
it happens sometimes.
Seriously here, are we in a spot where we can reverse course, or are we doomed?
That's an interesting question. I think when a lot of people watched Biden, their thought was when he stammered and didn't know where he was. I think a lot of people thought that, well, we just need to find someone else to take his place. Then we found out it probably wasn't that easy. And then I think we get the Supreme Court ruling that basically says the president can kill anyone he wants to, as long as he can say it was a presidential act. And then I think people started thinking, the future doesn't look all that bright, and maybe democracy isn't going to make it. But you, with politicians much of your life, you probably know more about that than I do. I mean, I had 3 months as an intern in Congress, and that was about it for me. Although I did cover City Hall for a while for the Tribune, but you were in the middle. You've been in the middle of this thing for a long time, and that's a good question. Do you think that they can just reverse this trend?
Well, first thing you have to ask is, did it really have an impact? You had a lot of people yelling, but they did. The polling, one poll I saw afterwards, Donald Trump can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a supporter. Joe Biden can mumble his way through a debate and not really lose any supporters either, at least at the core. So nobody's mind was really changed, other than a lot of people got nervous and would like to do something to have a better chance of winning. But I don't think anybody's mind who was going to support Biden has changed. I think that's a point in the favor. The question is, you need more than 46% to win, usually.
Yeah, I think you're right though. The polling is going to be huge, and I'm seeing a little bit of everything with the polls. I don't think we've had a definitive one as we speak, but I also think it's going to trend against Biden. Because people are going to take a lot of people hear what other people, so-called experts, say, and they change their mind on that. People don't really want to have an independent mind. They want to have a popular one. That's where I think the polling is going to be increasingly bad for Biden.
The campaigns I've dealt with always focus on what they call the movable middle, that little bunch of people who just for some reason can't make up their mind one way or another. And I think any reasonable person looking at the debate, if I was a movable middle person, I'd be going, I don't know about that. But then the same people are hearing from the Democratic machine saying, well, you know what? Trump spewed 30 lies per minute or whatever it was, and none of that stuff is provable, and he's going to be a horrible person. Again, stuff you should have known anyhow, but if you're in the middle, you haven't been paying attention.
I just think that you want to get a lot of people out to the polls, and you also want a president who is going to drag people to the polls for Congress and governors and others. And I don't know that we have that with Biden. What I do know is that, just as an example, if Gretchen Whitmer were running and it wasn't Trump, we'd have Michigan right off the bat. And Michigan right now, if you named a state that will be the deciding state, it would be Michigan. Also, women would be far more enthusiastic. You would think men would too, but definitely women. And so there'd be a lot of things. And when an election like this one that we're going to have is over, people will be saying 12 different things about what steered the campaign, what steered the decision. Well, if it hadn't been for the Hispanics who live in Florida, then Biden would have won, that kind of thing. So there's so many variables, and if you can just chew away a little bit at a few of them, that can make all the difference in the world.
Well, Mike, I'm glad I'm not a betting man, because I wouldn't know where to put my money.
Well, I don't know either. That's but I'm taking. I did bet on Gretchen Whitmer. I bet like $10 to make I think it was like 300 that she would be the next president, and so. That's why I'm so intense when I talk about her. It wasn't that I love her that much. But she is. I think she's terrific, and I think she would get people out there.
Mike, thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was great. I'm going to vote for you.
Mike and Mike, thanks for being with us. I'm going to vote for each of you. And for the rest of you, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel.